Let me go ahead and introduce our speaker of the day. We have Lalit Bhatt. He is the CTO at Entitle and has been a leader in designing both SaaS and AI-based applications in the industrial sector for over a decade. He's an industry expert who has an exceptional grasp of technology and its applications specifically for machinery manufacturers. He's also very vocal about his insights on the technology industry and often shares fascinating content about AI on LinkedIn. So I would recommend giving him a follow. With that being said, Lalit, I will pass it on over to you.
Thanks, Colin, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from whichever part of the world you are. And today we will discuss about installed base and why it's important, especially in the context of OEMs. I'll start with a very interesting take by John Russell, who the president of Harley Davidson, that the more you engage with customers, the clearer things become and the easier it is to determine what you should be doing. And that is so much relevant, especially with companies which manufacture products and more so with equipment manufacturers. Because with equipment manufacturers, the OEMs, there is a very unique thing that the relationship goes on for years. It just starts with the selling of the equipment. And then there are multiple touch points that happen across that life cycle of that equipment. And it also provides an opportunity not only to serve customer, but also to build a stronger relationship and open more revenue streams out of that relationships. So having said that, one of the very important terms that you quite often hear in the OEM industry is what we call as wallet share. What is a wallet share? What a wallet share in the context of an OEM is actually like when an equipment is sold by the OEM, then what happens is that the relationship starts there in terms of the need of that equipment in terms of parts, consumables, services. And then when we talk about wallet share, if we just say that let's say if there is a $100 possible spend that happens around that equipment in that aftermarket or after sales scenario, then the question is that how much OEM is getting it back. The money on the table is $100, but how many it is getting back to you and how many the competitors, others that are taking away from you. Yeah, I know that for sure. We cannot have a claim on complete $100, but still, like, what is the percentage of that one? And that is a very, very important thing. And then going forward, if we look into that relationship on a longer horizon, that relationship also determines that when the equipment will be obsoleted or when they will be doing expansions, where they will going after, where they will be going to buy the new equipment. So from that context, wallet share is a very, very key metrics, key concept for an OEM to have a very closer look on that one and very, I would say, a very deterministic way to get a hold on that one. But what's the challenge? Why it is so difficult to do a wallet share retention, especially in terms of OEMs? And what we have seen, like working with so many customers, especially in the B2B, this large equipment manufacturing companies, the bigger problem we have seen is that, especially like because they're very old companies, sometimes they have seen multiple transitions of technologies. They go through multiple mergers, demergers kind of thing. But what it leads to is that the data is so much fragmented inside data silos. I'm not sure. I think those who all are in the webinar today, if you can relate to this one, whenever we have seen this slide to our customers, the prospects, everyone relates to is that one, and they also clearly understand that this is one of the basic reason that, and that is the basic reason for their inability to basically harness their installed base. And why that happens, as I touched upon, it's like so many factors that come into play, so many tools, spreadsheets flying all around. There is a restricted access of data. There is a lot of reliance on tribal knowledge, but what it all leads to is that multiple data silos, not only the institutionalized data silos like ERP, CRM, they are very institutionalized systems. Everyone knows about them in the organization. At least everyone knows that this is one of our data silos. But going beyond that, is this and it's very common that we see multiple times that still there are data silos which people are even unaware of. There's like a lot of knowledge sitting inside spreadsheets, inside custom tools, which are done for very, very specific purpose, but then they start holding very important pieces of those data pieces within them. So before we go forward, I think we'll just have a small poll in terms of like, what is the state of your installed base data? If we can, maybe we'll just hang on for 30 seconds. People can vote on that one. Okay, I think maybe Soham, we can close on the vote. Okay, maybe we'll get the results shortly. Okay. Yes, I think not, I would say that not very different from what we have seen. And this is a sort of a pattern that we ourselves have also seen working across our customer ranges, that OEMs, based on the size and all, but usually they deal with like 7 to 12 system kind of thing. The major ones are like 3, 4, 5 kind of thing, but then you start counting the peripherals, we start finding more those data silos hiding around those boundaries basically. And then where it affects, what we are seeing is that data quality affects the labor productivity in a big way. And it also, many times the data is even wrong or incomplete, and this actually leads to wrong decision making, and which sets the direction in a very, very wrong way for an organization. And this also leads like a very cumbersome process to reach to some conclusion about some customer problems. So what's the how we can solve that one? I know that the webinar, I think the more important, the aspect that we want to focus on is that how we can increase the sales using installed base data, and I'll quickly jump on that one. But I just want to set up this context, because what we've seen is that unless the data is not very clean and not unified, not deduplicated, anything we do on that one, it basically leads to what we call as garbage in and garbage out. So the first and most important thing is to getting hold of your IB data and putting it in a canonical data model and making sure that it is accessible in a very, very easy way. Once that is in place, it opens up multiple opportunities in terms of harnessing that data. And then what I'll do is that from now, the next part of the webinar, I'll focus on some of these analytics. It is not limited to this one. This is what we have seen are one of the highest used, or the ways in which are used by many OEMs in a predominant way to basically harness the installed base to get more sales insight. So the first most important thing is to make the data available in a very, very accessible format. Visibility is one aspect of that one, but making it accessible in terms of like you're able to filter them very easily, so that you can reach out to your data set in a very, very easy way. And that's where whole data cleaning and putting it in a data model is good. It's a good first step. But if it is not accessible, it is of no value actually. It's just sitting out there and actually eating the bottom line in terms of incurring cost in terms of doing those data storages. So what is very, very important as well is that that data is accessible, available in a very easy way to the salespeople, and it just doesn't goes beyond to the salespeople, not restricted to salespeople. It goes beyond the organization. This data can be used by marketing, by for people to build service contracts. So use cases become unlimited. But the key here is that is the data available to be used in very, very easy way through filters and through other mechanisms. So for example, like I'm just giving a screenshot out here. This is like one of from our application. But what you can see is that over a map now you can start filtering out those database. For example, like just as an example, I've shown that you want to know which all are equipments in the field which are between 10 and 15 years. And that's where now you can start figuring that out. So this is a very simple analytics. Then we can get into more involved analytics, but that also gives a lot of the ROIs or the values that can be harnessed from that one is of multiple X kind of thing. So one of the things that you can do now is that you can start doing cohortings and clusterings in a very, very easy way. So for example, again, one of the example clustering cohorting is in itself allows us to divide or segment our customers in many, many different ways based on the use cases or based on the campaigns we are targeting on that front. But essentially, like one of the example here is that you can just start figuring out that which are healthy, which are above average, and it could be your own definition of healthy as well. There are some standard definitions, but it could be based on the business cost context. Those definition can be basically built to determine that which are the healthy customers and which are the customers. Two very important customer cohorts that are always interesting to look into is that which are at the risk of churning and which are on the path of growing very heavily for whatever reasons. And it becomes very powerful if we can like put it on a time series, then we can easily see that which customers are changing their path in their journey basically. So that is about cohorting and clustering. There are more interesting things that can be done because once the order history can be attached to a customer, to an asset, more interesting thing can be done in terms of like recency, frequency, and consistency. So you can figure out. In fact, consistency here is very interesting. I'll not get into the detail of everyone. These are very standard things. The more important thing what I want to emphasize on is that once your data story is placed, this becomes very, very easy. So for example, let's say consistency. Consistency actually, the customer might be just buying once in a year, but they buy very consistently in that period of the year. And if that information is surfaced in an easier fashion, it makes it very easy for you to actually intervene them right before that point in time and basically intervene in such a way that you can actually unlock value for both of yourself, for the customer and for yourself. Then much more involved AI models can be now built on top of that one. So for example, like now we can start analyzing the buying patterns. So we can, let's say that what we can do is that we cohort the customers and we figure out that, okay, this cohort of customer need to behave in the same way. But what usually you would see or what we have seen is that if I bring the attention to this spread of the customers, what we have seen is that in spite of having the same behavior they are supposed to do, in spite of maybe, let's say, having the same number of equipment, when we normalize them to, let's say, same number of equipment, still there will be a lot of variation in terms of how they are buying your services, your parts. And that basically opens up a very unique opportunity in terms of finding out that which are our customers which are buying heavily from us. They can become your benchmark customer, and which are the set of customers who are not actually buying at the same level. And we expect them to buy because we have figured out that they need to behave in the same way. Maybe they're going to competitor. Maybe they are buying it from a gray market. That also is very common out there. So that also becomes very important to identify those set of customers and basically do a reach out to them in a very, very data driven way. You are armed with all that sets of data, and it becomes very easier now to do a discussion and understand why that pattern is happening with them. Then another interesting thing that can be done is the propensity models. With all this data, propensity is very powerful in one way. We all know that sales resources or any resource in organization always scarce, and it always becomes very important to prioritize that where people need to focus on, where the ROIs are maximum. And that's where the propensity models become very, very important. That okay, we have figured out, looking at purchasing pattern, what I showed in the last slide, that these are the 100 customers, but maybe because of how many resources you have got, you can just approach 10. Then which 10? And that's where this all propensity models becomes very important. There are other very interesting models that can happen around them. We have seen that like some of the customers, not all, again, I think this is thing we have seen very, very rare, I would say, because not many OEMs know at which duty cycle their equipments are running in the field. So, but if that data is there, So what happens is that now, based on the duty cycle, those purchasing patterns can be built. And we know that at certain duty cycles, what a machine needs in terms of parts, in terms of in terms of services. And that's where a lot of prediction and prescription of opportunities can happen. Then part recommendations, I think probably Amazon has made it very powerful, very common for people to know about. It's like that if they are buying this part, or if we are knowing that we are recommending this part, what are the other parts that people normally or the customers normally buy with that one? And with that, kits can be created, or you can create a bouquet of parts that all go together. And that basically opens up a lot of cross-sell and upsell opportunities as well. Then other very interesting thing that we have seen actually helps a lot is in terms of identifying the context in the customer base. And if the data is at one place, those customer base can be mined, they can be pulled out, we can figure out from which source these contacts are coming, and we can even rank them based on certain, whatever the algorithm or whatever, we know that what makes more sense, whether for this customer reaching to a service guy makes more sense, or reaching to a let's say maintenance guy makes more sense, or reaching to a operations guy makes more sense. And based on that one, this thing can be more we can basically refine the approach much better in doing a reach out to these customers. And then I think, of course, how can we ignore Gen AI when the whole world is talking about? But I know that there is one aspect of Gen AI where you put all the PDFs into LLMs and all those things. And this is probably becoming more of a commodity. Of course, like we still have issues of hallucination and those things, which basically, so these models are good in the case of where we want to generate like more creative things, stories and all those things. But in case of service scenarios, I think we still have some miles to cover, because giving a wrong recommendation can sometimes can be a lot problematic. But what we have seen is, and that's what we are working out as well, is that there is a very powerful aspect of Gen AI. We put also broadly it in terms of like processing the unstructured data, but there's a huge amount of information that is sitting inside service tickets, that is notes, all those things. And can we bring that all information together and build a better insight about the customer? One set of insight that we saw that we can create it from the structured data when we pull all this data from ERP, CRM and all those things. But then there is another level of insight that can be created about that particular customer when we go and basically process all those service notes and tickets and all those kinds of things. So I just try to paint a very high level broad brush on that one, touching on some of the like high level analytics on that one, based on business, based on domain. There is much more. There are many different other kind of opportunities that comes up. And what we have also seen is that sometimes like works very closely with the customers, with the OEMs, with the business people, because they know that if we look the data into certain way, or if we process the data in certain way, it can actually uncover a lot of very hidden kind of patterns, which can help them in doing their sales outreaches. So yeah, I guess that's where probably I want to close. And yeah, hopefully, I think that gives an idea about in terms of how we can approach it. But again, I would say that the cardinal rule is get your data story first in place, and this all things start becoming a possibility. Yeah, Colin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks for the conversation. While it always engaging and learn something new, definitely. We did have a couple questions roll in during the presentation. Please also, if there's other people out there that have questions, now is the time to ask. I have two up front, so this will give you a chance to think of some other things to ask. The first one is, what role do you see Gen AI playing in the future for increasing sales for OEMs?
Yeah, so I think Gen AI, what we have seen, I think at a technical front, I would say that we still have seen a limited applicability of Gen AI on the structured data, but we see a huge role it can play into the unstructured data of the things. And it's not just about service ticket notes and those things. It can even go beyond inside processing like voice, what customers is talk, what customer is telling in the phone. It can even go beyond like processing emails and those kind of things. But at the end of the day, where it will become very, very powerful and where it becomes very important is that when we connect it, that insight back into the structured data at that location level and use that to refine our approach to the customer. So yeah, I think Colin, that's where I believe that I think Gen AI would, we are already seeing some of these things. People are approaching these things in these ways, and we think that that would actually be a huge differentiator in terms of who can actually process this data in a meaningful way and create more insight about the customer. Because I'll again go back to the opening statement: the more you know about the customer, the more opportunities it creates for you.
Thank you. And then another question was, have you seen any other companies with a CRM like Salesforce or Dynamics do anything similar to what you shared today? I'm assuming such as coming up with different types of wallet share analytics or being able to understand buying patterns, etc.
That's a very interesting question because we do, all of our customers had CRM, either Salesforce or Dynamics. And we have not seen these things being inherently built inside CRM or even ServiceMax or those kind of things. For one very important reason is that what we do is basically we have that capability to bring the data from different data silos, unify it, make sense of that data together. But the way we work is we actually, I would say that it's not like we are in terms of like Salesforce or us, it's more like Salesforce and us kind of thing. Because what we do is that we basically make this data available, the whole install base in analytics within Salesforce as well. So we have that thing also in place. You are looking into Salesforce, you are going to an account, and now you want to understand the install base in the whole install base insight about that account. And that's where we work we work in a synergistic way with the whole Salesforce thing. And this whole install base analytics is made available in the context of that that particular account. And it makes it very, very powerful because now you have that whole commercial and technical information together to make a much better decision.
And here's a question that I can ask upon the audience is, what do you generally see from some of the prospects or previous prospects now are customers and how they had visibility into their install base? Where did you typically see that coming from?
Colin, can you repeat that question? I think I'm still.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the challenges that I hear from our prospects and previous customers or current customers that were prospects are, how could you explain how they're tracking their install base or how they get that visibility today?
Okay. I think we can go back to the poll that we did. It's mostly spreadsheets,
right.
or it is sitting all around in different systems. What we have seen is that typical approach is whenever they want to do any analytics, they would basically, one of the very specific project is run, someone would go try to first figure out where all the data is sitting. And it sometimes might be spreadsheet, sometimes CRM, ERP, somehow club that data together. Sometimes the cleaning is done, and we have seen that sometimes cleaning is not even done, but just run on top of that one. We see a couple of problems with that one. First thing, there is usually such a big time lag between when you need the analytics and when it actually comes on your table that a lot of the value of that actually diminishes, because the more time is taken to reach to that analytics, the more the value diminishes much faster. And then of course, like these are again one of kind of thing, whatever cleaning or whatever unification you have done, the moment context changes, that exercise has to be redone again. And what we have also seen is that some of the customers just run it as a periodic exercise in a very, very limited way, where when they have like very defined high value use cases, very, very focused use cases, but that's what they are just able to use those data and that whole piece of work.
All right. Thank you for adding in that context and taking my question to help the audience as well. I don't see any more questions, but again, thanks, Follett, for coming in and sharing some of your wisdom and knowledge. And to all the attendees, if you have any questions, anybody feel free to send an email to Lalit or to the info@entitled.com. Feel free to also scan that QR code and get some more information. Keep an eye out. We will be hosting other events, and I think there is one coming up at the end of September, and look forward to seeing you all there. With that being said,
Yep.
thank you again.
Okay. Thank you.